Welcome, welcome everyone. Welcome council, staff, delegation, and the gallery. Let's begin with a territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land which we're broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. And I am going to move to a moment of reflection. And this Wednesday, March 8th, marks International Women's Day. Each year, this day is for us to acknowledge and celebrate the economic, political, and cultural achievements of women, girls, two-spirit, trans, and non-binary people. It's also a time to reflect on the work and the work that needs to be done. International Women's Day is rooted in the fight for women's votes, as well as the work of labor and peace movements. In order to attain an equal place in society, these women knew they needed a seat at the table. They knew that they had valuable things to say about creating fair and inclusive communities. As we reflect on these early struggles, contributions, and achievements, we must acknowledge that there are many who are still excluded, their capacity for contributions not fully realized. We must not allow difference to divide us, with some advancing at the expense of others. It is imperative that we include trans, non-binary, two-spirit people, and all gender minorities in conversation about women's rights, feminism, and equality. The unique experiences of women and gender minorities who are also Indigenous, Black, racialized, disabled, lesbian, and of other sexual minorities must also be embraced. This International Women's Day, let's commit to building a strong, inclusive movement that celebrates and realizes the full potential of women and gender minorities without question or judgment. We are going to move to the approval of minutes from the February 6th meeting. So I'll call for a mover and seconder. Councillor Freeman, Councillor Bodley, all in favor? Unanimously approved. We have one delegation today, and we're going to welcome Jeff Stager. Jeff is from the Federation of Agriculture, and he's here to give us an update. Jeff, you have 10 minutes.
Only 10 minutes? So thanks very much for allowing me to be delegation today with the Federation of Agriculture. We're just bringing you the census data, and the overall picture is, what happened to the cities and important to the country, and we're not to live in the region where we have the best work with. So the census document, which hopefully you can all see it here, is probably on your screen. Perfect. By the way, I want to thank you so much for your effort. Thank you all for your election and re-election on the council, and the staff as well. They do a lot of hard work to keep everything working. It's good on everybody's part. So this document comes from Fusion Waterloo planning, and hope they've got a new one. This one's dated, but it's still relevant. And let's start right there. If you so kind of.
So in the whole region, of course, there's 1,374 farms. And the good news, I have an update of that for the 2021 census. We'll get that in the last bit of the presentation. And in Ontario, 49,000 farms. In the Dominion of Canada, 193,000 farms. All right, let's go to the second page, please. And you'll see in the top right corner, there's a farmer guy with a pitchfork, and that shows that the average age of farming operators in Waterloo is 49.5 years, and the average in Ontario is 55.3. So that shows, there's some energy and vibrancy, some new people coming into agriculture, and so that's a good sign for Waterloo region, good for us. There's some other small data there about the size of farms and land use. And if we would flip over to page number 3, we'd see what kind of farms we have in the Waterloo region. So we're really good at cattle ranching and farming, and we have some fruit and vegetables happening now because people have found a little niche where they can grow apples, potatoes in Wilmot and elderberries in Woolwich, and they kind of find a market for that kind of product. In 2016, 45 farms sold certified organic products. Renewable energy, 1 in 10 farms in the region in 2016 had renewable energy producing systems on their farms. So that's like solar panels, maybe some windmills. And what's up and coming are things like bioreactors where they can convert organic material into natural gas, either put it back in the system or make electricity with it. And on the last page are some of the numbers about agriculture in the Waterloo region. And so in 2016, in the Waterloo region, there were gross farm receipts of $563 million. So it was quite a bit of economic activity, and expenses are also on that page. And so, that all represents money that comes in the Waterloo region, and it there's 3,000 to 4,000 people that get up every day and milk the cows and plant the corn, and there's another 20,000 folks who are supplying feed, their veterinary services, their accountants, their machinery people, all kinds of folks. So it's still a pretty good business. And just in a quick aside, where the longest running business in the Waterloo region is at the foot of Shantz Hill. And there has been a flour mill at the bottom of that hill since the beginning, before Confederation. And so at one time, I've delivered wheat there myself. It got milled there. Then it went across the road to what used to be the Naughty Pine, and you could buy a lovely pie there. And it was a full circle. And it'd be nice if we could see that kind of full circle thing happening again in the Waterloo region. That'd be really cool. So as I mentioned, this census is dated. There's one thing happened since then, and our Federation of Agriculture put together this one pager. I don't know if you're sitting on your desk there. And the number of farms went up to 1,409 farms. And there's now $652 million in farm cash receipts. And fun stuff here at the bottom is that 22% of farms are now generating renewable energy, and 28% of farm operators are female. And 43% of farms are small farms for less than $100,000. So that's I think in my opinion, that's the new and upgrowing niche market in the Waterloo region, where someone has found 100 people that would buy their one-of-a-kind product, and that would support that person, that entrepreneur, that young farmer in their business. So that's pretty cool. So that's the heart of my presentation, but I would like to make you aware of this document here. Now, you'll forgive me, Mayor McCabe, this is the same joke I told the other day, but after a full day of doing minutes and reading notes, obviously you're going to want to do some recreational reading, so this is perfect. So with that, it says right in the front here, helping you make informed choices with straight answers on food security, climate change, animal welfare, food safety, and much more. This is a great document, and you'll all be honorary farmers if you read that, and it makes sense. That's A1. So with that, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak, and hopefully when the region does their census, we can come back and discuss that, and maybe any follow-up questions you have. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stager. I'm looking forward to getting down to the real dirt of farming. Do we have any questions from council for Mr. Stager? Mayor McCabe?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Jeff, for coming to City of Waterloo. I know I heard you at the region of Waterloo, but it's always a pleasure when you come into the chamber. So thank you very much. I think as someone who grew up on a farm many, many years ago, it's I still have a lot of family that live in the rural area and understand that it's obviously key sector for the benefit of ourselves as city dwellers now, but also for anyone, right? Farmers feed cities, I think is the slogan. But anyway, thanks for coming in and talking about this. One of my questions was, we are in a mixed urban rural area in Waterloo region. So what you've outlined some of the different statistics, which is great to see that. I think, was it 28% of the farmers are women? That's a great statistic. Yeah, that's fantastic, especially when it's in reference to what Councillor Roach was just talking about with International Women's Day. That's a great stat. Just wondering what you see as some of the big opportunities or potential maybe risks for our agricultural sector in our region or beyond.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And you know what? There's always challenges, but let's talk about what's good or is implied good about agriculture in the Waterloo region and how you are a part of that. Here's why. Although the number of farms in the Waterloo region, you could say, so what, it sort of stayed the same. And across Canada, most agricultural jurisdictions, they are dropping precipitously. So in a perverse way, we lead the way on how to do it right because we're not losing farms. That sort of implies that somehow, you know, the policy we've had so far through regional planning and the local municipalities has indirectly or intentionally helped agriculture. So don't stop doing that. So I don't know what that would be, but offhand I'd volunteer that there's been you know, stewardship of our land base, because every acre that is turned into buildings is one less acre for a farmer to make a livelihood. It's probably things like the LRT, which means they don't have to expand out. It's probably things like the hard edge boundary. Well, there's a novel idea for all of Ontario, and we lead that way. So perhaps those things are ways that we at least can maintain our population. People know they can set up a farm and invest their life into that and make it a career. And, you know, Bob's your uncle, life is good. So.
As easy as that. I also just, I guess, thinking of some of the risks, and you were talking about, you know, development and the need for cities to intensify. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. The LRT has been a key piece of not only transportation infrastructure for the region, well, Kitchener and Waterloo particularly, but it's also been a key economic development driver and development driver as well. So I think you're right. It was a really great visionary project for us to have in this region. But just wondering how you see or what you're maybe worried about with Bill 23 in terms of agriculture in particular, or our agriculture sector in particular. Yeah,
well, there's just lots to cover there. I always just revert back to one that comes to mind first offhand, and that has to do with Waterloo region leads the province in something called the Rural Water Quality Program. This is a combination of private money, like the farmers and landowners, and public money. And this is administered by the GRCA. And some of the stuff I've read in Bill 23 about what's going to happen, what the new mandate is for the conservation authority suggests that it's just going to be flood control. Well, that's not good for us in Waterloo region because we lead the province in how to work together, both city and country, to keep the water clean because, you know, we've chosen to be groundwater based. So it makes more sense to keep the water clean when it goes into the aquifer than it is to let everything go in there and then try to clean everything on the way out again. So that was in 1973. This is how you do things nowadays. And so in terms of your question about Bill 23, at first glance, it appears the Conservation Authority, or good old Grand River Conservation Authority, is going to be cut back. And who's going to administer this program? How are we going to get this done? Because that program is still going today. And for instance, you know, on any farm, you could have you know, waterway go through. So you put some money in, and the taxpayer, thank you very much, puts in the other to put a buffer strip along that ditch. That means you don't have infiltration from sediments, and the water stays clean. So that's just when it comes to mind talking about Bill 23. But I only have 2 minutes left to go, so we're not going to bother with the rest of it.
No, you're okay. You're okay on time. When we're asking you questions, you can keep talking.
Yeah. I think that's as far as I can't think of what else is. It just seems, you know, the public's opinion has evolved. It's, you know, we're not doing 20th century, the last century's planning where they said good planning is let's zone under 100 acres. We don't do that anymore. Modern day sensibilities are not there. So whatever in this Bill 23, imagined or real, it does not encourage that intensification. It seems not good for us in Waterloo region. Now, I mean, I have sympathy for the province. They have to set a standard for the whole province. Otherwise, you know, each municipality can maybe, you know, jimmy the system to their own benefit. But in this case, this is no good because this move for the conservation authorities, man, that spoils the good thing that we have in the unique here in the Waterloo region. So I don't know how many other things in the Bill 23 you could probably put in the same pile of stuff that how just affect our own special unique situation with these sweeping changes like that.
Right.
And you know, I recognize what you all did here in City of Waterloo. There's like, how are we going to do this? if you can't get development funds, then how are you going to build the roads to service subdivisions? Well, how are you going to do that? I don't know. I don't know enough about this. There's a lot of stuff in that thing. I'm sure staff is still scratching their head on it. I'll just leave it there. Thank you
Yeah,
for the
you're right.
question.
You're very right, Mr. Steiger. There is a lot in Bill 23, and I don't know if our chief planner there has scratched his head so much. That's why his hair's so short. But yeah, there are a lot of questions we still have about Bill 23,
Yeah.
and I appreciate what your concerns are with respect to GRCA and the protection of our water in particular, because. And of course on intensification as well. I certainly agree with you on that. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. That's great.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Tager. And you don't have to worry about going over your time. We have a lot of time for farmers. We love farmers, so don't worry about going about past your time.
I know that feeling, brother.
We have another question from Councillor Wright.
Through you, Chair Dad Joke. Thank you for highlighting the ecosystem services that our local farms provide. I mean, it's incredibly important at a time when we're a community that has declared a climate emergency, and just the various different benefits from the groundwater protection to the wicking role that farms have of absorbing rainfall. I just want to touch on another aspect that is related to climate change. We produce a certain amount of field corn in the region, and in the province itself, it's like 33% of our field corn is used in ethanol. Right. And so I'm just wondering if you're seeing any shifts or changes based on that with the increasing electrification of vehicles, and whether you predict that that's going to be something that changes significantly.
Okay. So just to make sure, you're talking about ethanol?
Yeah, the corn that's grown
Yes.
specifically for ethanol. Yeah.
Okay, so from a producer standpoint, this is good for producers because another market for their product, not just feed or for making starch. So we're glad the ethanol market exists. It seems like a good deal because there's a market for our product. We grow more corn in Ontario than we use. So it's a good deal.
Just as a follow-up to that, but if we're reducing our ethanol because we're reducing gasoline usage by electrifying vehicles, do you see a shift in that? Like, it's a pretty versatile crop. So do you see any impacts locally if we're reducing ethanol?
Oh, I see. Are you saying then, okay, if we grow a lot of ethanol, is that at the disadvantage of other crops? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, it can be that, but also just if the market is reduced, the market for ethanol is reduced because we're switching to electric vehicles rather than using gasoline vehicles.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know what I would say to that one. It's a dynamic situation. Like the price of crude oil really determines everything. So that kind of decides whether ethanol is in favor or not. And as far as electric vehicles, yeah, I have no easy answer for you. I guess what has happened to date is that the ethanol market is still intact. As the price of crude was going so high recently, the blenders were putting more ethanol in. That was good for us. And electric vehicles right now, it should still work because electric vehicles had to be charged. So ethanol or using plant products to make electricity is a new thing. It's happening now. Golly, there was just reading there that they're doing research on catalysts to see how they can easily convert to make ammonia, which is a fertilizer byproduct, a lot of a necessity for making crops grow, and how they can do that now with a catalyst. Ruthenium is the compound. Can you imagine? So there's a lot of research going into making electricity, and ethanol can be part of that because ethanol is a source of as farmers we convert sunlight into energy, into oils, starches, and proteins. And in fact, we're even I'm going to take it off a little bit to tangent here. We actually are the only industry that actually uses carbon dioxide as part of our process. Think about that. Us and guys who do forestry, we actually use carbon dioxide to make our stuff, food and fiber, proteins, and vegetable oils, that sort of thing. So that's pretty cool, and interesting opportunities come from that, you know, like, you know what, like, like just for shits and giggles, let's say carbon goes to $150 a ton or $200 a ton. Well, you know what, I could be a carbon farmer, and, oh, and by the way, I have some food. Are you interested in that? So it all depends where prices are at, what farmers can do, you know, so an interesting opportunity in carbon farming.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. I think you've pointed out some of the very versatile roles that farms are going to play in the years ahead.
Any further questions, Council? Sure, Mayor McCabe.
Thanks, through you, Chair. I'm just curious, do you have any statistics or even anecdotal information about, you know, some of the newcomers to our community from, you know, maybe other countries, for instance, however they arrive here? Do you know if some of them are taking up farmers? Like, I know you had a story in here about.
Yeah. I saw that story about that guy growing grapes.
But I'm just wondering if you had any information about maybe some of the diversification of farming beyond women taking a more active. No, oh, they've always taken an active role, but maybe being more owners. But just wondered if you could comment or provide us any information on that.
Well, two things come to mind. I just remember this week, Susan Kosselman, she wrote a nice article in the Kitchen Record about the women in agriculture, about 6 or 7 local women. And I think there was some other groups, producing foods that aren't typical. So that's good. And the only thing that came to mind when you first started talking was, so I'm at my farm out there in North Dumfries Township, and this guy comes in, he's East Indian, right? He brings along his dad. He says, my dad just wants to see a farm. Well, you know why? Because in India, they're all farmers over there, and this guy had tears in his eyes because he's at a farm. You know, there's a barn, there's the fields, there's a tractor. He felt at home. You know, I'm thinking I bet you could have a really good agritainment, for lack of a better word, operation if I could just have my farm and there's a couple of cows and new Canadians who identify with that farm, in this case East Indian, they would just love sitting around the place for a day just to see. It's a farm, right? And they have a really strong farm lobby over there. So I'm not too sure if that, I don't know what came to mind when you first asked the question, but yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that question.
Mr. Steger, thank you so much. We love farmers. And in fact, we even have a farmer on staff here, our CAO.
Yeah, they're everywhere. I know.
You know, you're a great example of hard work. You're very knowledgeable. You're agricultural experts, and you know, they say, going back to the dad jokes, farmers are always outstanding in their field.
Yeah, I know. So make sure you don't tassel me about that right arm.
Thank you very much.
And I'll just finish off with that, and it works both ways. Like the success of farms in the countryside all have to do with the fact that we're close to a big city with big city amenities and all that stuff that the professionals, like there's so much computer stuff happening on farms now. And it's just like them guys at Clear Path Robotics, those guys are making gizmos up and down the rows at night, doing crop maintenance stuff on it. So it works both ways, and we're lucky to be in the Waterloo region for that. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. We are going to move to consent agenda. Councillor Hamner.
Just on a point of order, Chair, I do need to declare a conflict with this particular item. One of the associations that's being recommended for a grant, I'm the president of, so I will declare the conflict.
Thank you for recognizing that, Councillor. I'll send you for a timeout. So we have one item on our consent agenda, and that is for a community cash grant, 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Watley, Councillor Vasek, second. All in favor? Carried unanimously. we can have Councillor Hamner return from her timeout. Welcome back. We're going to move to staff reports. And first staff report, we actually have a presentation. It's their cultural plan benchmarking. Andrea?
So you can hear me. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Hallam. I'm the Cultural Planning Specialist here at the City of Waterloo. I'll be giving you a high-level overview of some of the notable successes in 2022 from the Culture Plan. So the Culture Plan report card, which you all received, I think, at the beginning of the meeting, and the Culture Plan benchmarking report are produced each year to capture the work undertaken by arts and culture staff, which is guided by the Waterloo Culture Plan, a catalyst for culture 2014 to 2024. When we use the word culture with concerns to the work that we do, we are using the following definition of culture. So what do we mean by culture? Creative, artistic activity and the goods and services produced by it and the preservation of heritage. So that's the working definition that we use. The City of Waterloo plays a catalytic role with the work that we do. This encompasses providing funding, networking, breaking down barriers to cultural activities engagement, identifying opportunities, encouraging creativity, linking community with economic development and quality of life, collaboration, and celebrating local accomplishments. So I'm going to start with the first goal, Goal 1, building capacity. Goal 1 of the Culture Plan is to build capacity through various means of investment. In 2022, investment in arts and culture was increased noticeably by the Culture Sector COVID Recovery Grant Program that saw $150,000 invested into 14 arts and culture affiliate organizations. Overall, 50 organizations were supported through funding in 2022. We were able to apply for other levels of government funding and corporate sponsorship to fund local artists for both the July 1st Community Picnic and Lumen. So that's the leverage funding for artists that you see there. And also hired more artists overall for programming and events. We continue to mentor community arts and culture organizations to help build capacity to aid in their work in the Waterloo community. The demand for support from the arts and culture organizations has increased as they are still struggling to recover and rebuild from COVID. If you're following along in the report card booklet, I'll note that the Culture Plan is an interdepartmental plan, so I won't be speaking to Goal 2, which is heritage. Staff from the museum and other departments will be coming to council with their updates at a later date. So Goal 3 is animation, and we look to enliven streets, neighborhoods, and public green spaces. Festival attendance was higher in 2022 than in pre-pandemic. It was up over 25%. As well as the number of cultural festivals on City of Waterloo property and Waterloo Public Square bookings. Those are up over 35%. We continue to add to City of Waterloo Public Art Collection with a piece that was added at the East Side branch. Goal 4 is engagement. So Goal 4 looks to enhance engagement of community diversity and to build a stronger shared sense of belonging. 2022 saw more programs being offered, a large increase in attendance, and an uptake in free and outdoor programming and events. So I think this is an impact from COVID. People were very comfortable being outside. One of the biggest events that we saw in 2022 was Lumen, using the economic impact modeling provided by the Regional Tourism Organization. The conservative estimate for economic impact of Lumen combined with the extended offering totals over 4.7 million. Community feedback continued to come in long after the event with comments like, and this is a direct quote, "I had such a wonderful time at Lumen, and I was thrilled to see so many people of all ages out enjoying the event. I wanted to express a special thanks for the swing set in the Waterloo Town Square. I am 80 years old, and I went for a swing ride every day. It was the most comfortable and inventive swing ride I have had in decades. Thank you." So in 2022, we diversified the amount of and type of programming and events we offered, which saw a drastic increase in attendance. So attendance of events in 2019 was 47,438. In 2022 was 465,754. So that is a huge increase. Awareness is goal 5. It's about expanding community awareness and appreciation of culture. During the pandemic, we had to engage audiences virtually. Energy and resources were put into building virtual events and online programming. With programs and events resuming in person, we were able to maintain and gain more followers in 2022. This boost in online engagement and followers was in large part due to a contract position overseeing the Create Waterloo social media channel, but also an increase in overall programming and events. Earned media was up 421% in 1 year, as well as our reach from 2019 to 2022. Collaboration is our final goal, goal 6. So we continue to collaborate with many different organizations, businesses, and levels of government. Notable collaborations in 2022 include the hosting of the Creative City Network of Canada Creative City Summit, which saw over 180 municipal cultural workers in Waterloo, as well as a temporary public art installation with the Austrian Embassy, Ottawa. And thank you for your time. That's a really high level, really fast recap. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Thank you so much for your report. Council, any questions for Andrea? Councillor Vasek.
Thanks. Through you, Chair Roach, or I guess, yeah, Chair, what was it? Dad joke? Good dad jokes? Okay. I think that one's going to stick. You know, I didn't notice this in the report, so I'm sorry to spring this question on you, honestly. And maybe it would be something, if you don't have the answer now, you could get back to us. But the 3,224 increase at the Visitor Information Center. So the Visitor Information Center is incorporated really well into Waterloo and into Lumen. But outside of that, do people know about it? Is it well used? Have you ever looked at its use outside of those big festivals?
Through you, Chair, I'll defer to Estero.
Through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Vasek. So the number that's included in that report, the 3,900 visitors, are visitors that that went to the visitor center just for visitor information. They weren't involved in the programming. So the programming number appears in a different spot. So people that were there in connection to events like Lumen were recorded separately. So the visitor center normally sees over 7,000 people a year, between the beginning of May when we open and the middle of October when we close. So it is actually a pretty, people are very aware of it. There is still a huge demand for paper. People want maps. People want to be able to talk to somebody to find out what's going on in the community. So we do have, it is a very busy place.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor McCabe, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, and through you and to the rest of the team for all the interesting and vibrant activities that you produce. I'm not 80 years old, but I did love those swings. I wish we could have kept them. Just wondering, because a lot of the events are centered in the uptown area. Is that correct? Are there events and activities that occur kind of in other neighborhoods around Waterloo, or is it primarily kind of the uptown focused?
I'll take that one. Through you, Chair Roach, to the mayor. During the pandemic, we did begin to explore doing additional programming outside of the core because we were looking for smaller venues that were more accessible to the community. Last year, we were able to continue that through a collaboration with the Waterloo Public Library. So we did offer programming at places like Harper Branch Library, Albert McCormick, and the Eastside Branch Library, as well as Wing 404. This year, we also have a range of programs planned. One of our limitations, though, is that there aren't good event spaces outside of the core. A lot of our passive parks don't have the kind of amenities needed to support larger events. They don't have electricity, they don't have adequate parking, those kinds of things. So we are running a pop-up series this year that will sort of accommodate smaller groups of people, but will be available throughout the community.
Great, thank you. It's good to hear that it's spreading sort of beyond uptown, because obviously not everyone lives in uptown, but it's a good opportunity to explore different parts of the city. And my other question was around Lumen in particular. Do you feel, and that you can, I mean, I don't know if you can get back to me if you need to, but like when I attended it, I mean, there was thousands of people wandering around and it was a fantastic event. I was just wondering if you felt that if we do that again, there would be a need to close the streets or open the streets, depending how you like to look at it.
I'll take that one again. Through Chair Roach to the mayor. Last year's attendance of 35,000 people on the night of Lumen was about 20,000 people more than we anticipated. This year, we are looking, every year that we host Lumen, we move where the installations occur. This year, our plan is to host a number of the larger installations in Waterloo Park. But we will be looking at, once we do our site plan, we will be looking at whether or not that is something that needs to be considered. We agree that was identified as a significant safety concern last year, but it is challenging in the uptown to start closing some of those key roads.
Yeah, no, I understand that. That would certainly require some additional conversations. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about others who were there, but certainly I found it a safety issue. But I also just thought with that many people, and what a good problem to have, but that it would have been nice to just been able to kind of walk wherever you want to and not have to worry about. And there was also just cars lined up, like all up Caroline and that. So again, a good problem to have. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions, Council? So we are asked to approve this report and that Council continue to champion local cultural development. So let's get into the swing of things, and maybe if I can get a mover and a seconder. Councillor Rowe and Councillor Wright. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I love living in Waterloo, and these three reports that we're having today really kind of touch on why Waterloo is such a great place to live in. So it's fantastic. So our next report is the neighborhood strategy and implementation, and there is no special report, but there may be some questions. Council, Councillor Hamner.
Thank you, Chair Roach, through you. Thank you so much, Haley, and I know Julie was involved with the report as well. It's very detailed, and Beth as well. Sorry, I didn't see you sitting there. Just curious if you could share with us where you think your biggest challenges are in implementing the neighborhood strategy.
So through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Hanmer. I would say one of the main challenges we have is that neighborhoods have great, amazing, unique ideas, but that sometimes those don't fit in a perfect box of what we do at the city. So that can be challenging sometimes when new ideas come forward and we're exploring, what does that mean? For example, my favorite story to tell is Mary Ellen neighborhood wanted to do a duck race in a city body of water, and we were like, okay, how do we go about this? So, asking those questions of water services and different departments, and then trying to engage staff in those departments to understand why this is important and why this is so vital to our community can be challenging at times. So I would say just understanding with other teams, what the importance of this is, and that we have the neighborhood strategy to reference that strategic direction, and how we go about that is a key challenge that we experience. And
If I might, a follow-on question to that, Julie, thank you. You've done a lot of work in putting the strategy together, and I often think it's the best kept secret. So what can council do? We amplify what we can when you put announcements out, but are there other things that we could be doing to help a little bit more with the uptake on the opportunities that neighborhoods have? They don't have to be formally organized, but what else can we do to get the word out and encourage people to become part of the strategy and come up with the solutions?
So through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Hanbergen, I would say one of our key items in 2022 that we can happily share for you to reference is the website. So now that we have that very robust resource allocation there, there's lots of opportunities there for neighbors to be referenced. So even, questions that are coming up within neighborhoods of, how do I do this? How do I do that? We have how-to guides there. We have the grants there. We have so much information there that's designed to be in an easily digestible form, and to be right at fingertips. So we would just really encourage you when you get those types of questions. That's a great resource. And also, we're always happy to talk to community members, I would say, is one other thing. So even if they're not entirely sure of what exactly that looks like or what resources might be most applicable, I would say that we're always happy to chat. They don't have to feel like they have, a great plan already laid out or a specific problem that they want to talk about. So that would be my other key piece, in addition to sharing that website and, the information, as you've stated, that you do share, would just be encouraging them to discuss with us, even if it's not a fully, formed idea or grant or that kind of thing.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm just curious whether there are neighborhoods in the city where there might be capacity gaps for grant writing, and just what your group is doing to help mitigate that. I know from my personal experience working with the neighborhood program, it's exciting. It can be overwhelming to get together with your neighbors to find and right fit or right scope the project. So I'd just love to hear what some of the strategies are there. Thanks.
Yes, so through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Wright. There's a couple pieces, I would say, of that puzzle. So one thing, as I already talked about, was just talking to us from the beginning stages. It doesn't have to be a big giant thing, and part of the implementation of the neighborhood strategy was the mini grant program to try and provide another step of grant funding so that you're not just jumping into something where you require set documents on budget and that kind of thing. So that is one resource, I would say, that we have available there. Another recommendation in the neighborhood strategy is actually a capacity building program. So we were not quite there yet at that implementation stage, but that is another piece of the puzzle that we do have coming to try and support that capacity building for neighbors that are interested. So that's future report will be coming once we're at that stage. And I feel like there's another piece to your question there that I'm missing. Do you want to jump in, Beth?
Sure. We do have an event coming up in April, Food and Funds, where people can come out and learn about our grant programs and have that kind of conversation and get some help. I think too that the mini grant program that we offer really offers that sort of put your foot in the water. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert for any of our grants. We're always happy to help you through them. But the mini grant program really offers that put your foot in the water opportunity. And there was something else, Haley? Grant review. Yes, we are reviewing our grant programs and looking to make things easier for all applicants, understanding that not everyone's a professional grant writer. So we're looking at all of our grant opportunities through that lens.
Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Roach. Can you speak to, I know post-COVID, we're starting, at least I'm starting to see that neighborhood associations are becoming more and more active over the last year or so, while some are maybe struggling to get back to where they were at a pre-pandemic perspective. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that, and maybe, I know we've heard with some frequency about challenges related to volunteering, just broadly speaking, and finding volunteers, and whether there's anything more we need to be doing to try and recruit volunteers to our neighborhood associations, if we are indeed seeing some of these challenges with certain neighborhood associations coming back.
Okay, through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Bodley. I'll start on this one and then I'll pass it over to Haley as well for that feedback with the neighborhood associations. But I would say, again, with the neighborhood strategy, a lot of the programs that are coming into play are to support that at different levels. So while we know the neighborhood associations are one outlet, we're also trying to encourage neighbors to take smaller steps. So for example, our Block Connector program. So perhaps someone's not ready to volunteer for a neighborhood association yet, but we have that as, something that maybe they, as Beth used the term, kind of dip their toes in the water with that, and then they develop from there. So we're really trying to look at that capacity building through many different facets to be able to work with neighbors where they're at and encourage them. So that is one thing. The other thing that we'll say is that we are also building in resources for volunteer supports. So for example, our neighborhood associations have a direct membership with the Volunteer Waterloo region. So that's a resource that they're able to use and access, and staff can help them understand what that means. So for example, right now, the Lakeshore South Community Association is looking for someone to help with their website, and they've posted that position there. So there's definitely, like I said, a whole complement of things that we're trying to do to move those things forward, and to help neighbors to be empowered to, find what works for them and move from there. So I wouldn't say there's one key thing that we can do, unfortunately, but we are working to find as much as possible supports for those different levels. So Haley, I turn it over to you for...
Yeah, through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Bodley. Yeah, we've noticed with the neighborhood associations, some people post-COVID are ready to jump right in and plan all the same events that they had prior to, and others are taking a slower, more gradual approach to get back to things. And so from our end, we're just there to provide support as they continue to transition and continue to build their capacity kind of back up to post-COVID. So continuing to develop how-to guides to support them, through navigating city processes and planning events and all those important things. And then also continuing to attend those meetings and providing the city's insight and feedback from that perspective has been really helpful for the neighborhood associations that have, maybe not met as frequently in the past 2 years and then are starting to get up to speed on those types of things. So those would be the two supports that come to mind from the neighborhood association perspective.
Thank you so much, Haley. Councillor Rowe?
Through you, Chair. First of all, I wanted to say this is an excellent report, and I found it very informative. I have a question about the Spaces assets. And from my experience, newcomers, one of their primary needs, once they have settled, is that they need places to gather, and that often is hinging on time availability as well as financial. So my question about this map is there any consideration given to, for example, newcomers, but there's other groups that may hinder access in terms of availability, times, and finances? the question being, what was the lens for this map list? And is there anything that contributed to that in terms of accessibility?
Yeah, through you, Councillor Roach, to Councillor Rowe. Yeah, when we developed the Gathering Spaces asset map, the whole goal was that we recognize that there's not as many indoor spaces for community members to gather across the city of Waterloo. And so we wanted to leverage all of the other spaces beyond city facilities and kind of create an inventory of here's all the different spaces where you can gather and meet throughout the neighborhood. So that was really kind of the lens we went into, like how can we, categorize and inventory all of these great spaces that exist in the community. And through that process of connecting with businesses and educational institutions and places of worship and other spaces, we've been able to create this inventory of 240 plus indoor-outdoor spaces. And we think, having it available on the website does provide access for newcomers and other folks to be able to access that information. And I think the next step with that particular project is just about continually to promote that resource because it is relatively new. And we even hear at neighborhood association meetings, like, we're looking for somewhere to gather. We don't know where. Oh, well, we have this map. So just continuing to promote that opportunity for sure.
I think just to add to that as well, I feel like a broken record here, but some of the things complement each other, right? So like the mini grant program, for example, we understand that cost might be prohibitive to some people for a neighborhood-based gathering. And so that's part of where the mini grant is coming in, right? They don't need to apply for a neighborhood matching fund that involves these other processes, but that smaller pot of money of up to $300 per grant helps support a booking for a neighborhood activity. And then as far as our neighborhood associations, they would qualify for the facility rental discount rate. So they're getting a discount on those neighborhood gathering spaces as well. So we are trying to build other opportunities for that to be accessible to folks when they're wanting to do something that's neighborhood based.
Thank you. And just one follow-up question. So in terms of who you spoke to and to build the map and what people were looking for, were any newcomer agencies contacted in the region? I mean, I know it's for City of Waterloo and a lot of those agencies are in Kitchener, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, so through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Rowe. Yeah, throughout the development of the Gathering Spaces asset map, the direction came from the neighborhood strategy to develop this map. And so while we were, connecting with a variety of different businesses and places of worship and things like that, we did a direct contact directly with those folks. And then I don't believe anybody from like Immigration Waterloo region or anybody was consulted throughout the development of that particular resource, but we have connected with members of those organizations to support things like the development of our how-to guides that are available on the website.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm just curious about vertical communities. So as a lot of our neighborhoods are starting to go up, and just wondering if there's something specific in all of this that is for those communities. Thank you.
Yep, so through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Wright, that is a specific action item within the neighborhood strategy. So devoting specific work to help vertical communities explore these opportunities. So right now, for example, we have a how-to guide specifically to help give ideas for those types of communities. So again, still neighborhood connections. So all those similar things would apply, like mini grants, neighborhood match fund, etc. But trying to build in other resources where we can to support and encourage that. So the how-to guide speaks to things that might be more unique for those spaces than they would be to other types of neighbors. So definitely part of the action items and part of the work that we are doing to have other ways to support those communities as well.
Just to add on to that as well, we do also have a few of our block connectors that are operating in multi-unit buildings or vertical communities. And so they're working to forge connections with their floors or within the entire community and beyond with other neighborhood associations as well. So we're seeing some value in that program, specifically in the multi-unit buildings.
Thanks. Julie, I noticed in the report in 2022 about $9,000 was distributed to neighborhood connections through the mini grants for neighbors. Would we expect that same amount in 2023?
Yes, to you, Councillor Roach. So we actually have the continual $5,000 of operating that you'll see referenced in the report. And council has also recently approved some community grant funding that will be supporting that as well. So we will have another $5,000 to bring that total up to $10,000 this year to best reflect that demand.
Great, excellent. And then also the $50,000 that's allocated to support the neighborhood-led projects through the Neighborhood Matching Fund. How successful was this project? Any highlights?
Yeah, so it's difficult because I feel like there's many things I'd love to talk to you all day about, but it's definitely a very successful program. With the match requirement, oftentimes we're seeing neighborhoods demonstrate match above what their grant request is. So for example, in 2022, when we allocated $50,000 of grant funding, neighborhoods actually matched above that. So you're basically doubling, that amount of funding, if you will, for support. So definitely very successful. And we've seen lots of different examples as highlighted in the report of how neighbors are connecting, doing placemaking, making their spaces and their community welcoming. So something that we're certainly happy to celebrate that neighbors are doing within Waterloo.
Thank you very much, Julie. So I would ask council to receive this report as information. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Hamner and Councillor Rowe? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you so much. We will move to the next report, which is the community garden program policy. Go ahead.
We're just open for questions. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. No presentations. Sorry, I had to put you on the spot, Haley and Julie. Any questions from council? Councillor Wright.
This is regarding the community gardens, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I've just noted that a number of schools are doing gardening projects, and then the summer months hit and everyone goes away and they struggle to find anybody who can assist with their gardens. And then when the fall rolls around, they don't have anything to harvest because they lost it over the summer. So the learning opportunity is incomplete. And I'm just wondering if there's a way for us to work with the Waterloo Region District School Boards and the Waterloo Catholic District School Boards to create more community gardening opportunities in partnership. Because I know that what is in this report really focuses on what's available on public land. So it would definitely not fall into that, but I'm just curious whether you've looked at that whole potential. Thanks.
So through you, Chair Roach, to Councillor Wright. As you spoke to, so this policy and program is focused on city lands, so that is kind of outside of what we do. However, we do work with the Waterloo Region Community Garden Network and the work that they are doing to support gardens throughout Waterloo Region. So that would certainly be something that I think we would look to them for some leadership on of what they're seeing within the community. And I would say the other piece is, again, if we're focusing on these cities' lands and neighborhood-led projects, that tends to create some partnerships there as well. So for example, a community garden in a local park, the school might have a plot there. And so then neighbors might volunteer to then take care of that during the summer as you're speaking to. So again, I would say with most neighborhood work, it's dependent on, the neighborhood, the volunteers that are involved, but certainly I would say that type of connection and learning is something that we would love to continue to foster in the community through those current resources.
Any other questions, Council? Mayor McCabe?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just wondered if there's in the community garden, if it's something that's led by neighborhoods or by the city in terms of like setting aside space for like First Nations or space of that nature. Is that just left up to the neighborhoods if they decide to do that?
Through you.
Or do we work with some local First Nations organizations who've established community gardens?
Yeah, so through you, Chair Rich, to Mayor McCabe. Our program is focused on that neighborhood-led piece, so that would be something that the neighborhood would decide in determining their operations if that were something, or if a collaboration was something that they're interested in pursuing. So at the time, right now, the program is focused on that neighborhood-led development, so it wouldn't be focused on a specific population or organization.
Okay. And just a follow-up question. I know there's you help neighbors who are developing in public space and community space. Do you do any work maybe through the neighborhood strategy piece, like, because you're all the same people there, in terms of encouraging people to create gardens on their own property in their front, or like potentially using their front yards and turning it into more naturalized space or as well?
Yeah, so through you, Chair Roach, to Mayor McCabe. I think a couple pieces of that puzzle. So again, we would support neighborhood-led aspects of that. So if a neighborhood came to us and said, hey, we wanted to do like a planter box workshop for those in our neighborhood that have patios, that would be something that we would look at through our neighborhood grant programs. And the other piece of that puzzle would be in collaboration with other departments in the city of what their guidelines are. So for example, the transportation team and what their guidelines are for boulevard planting, we would assist in communicating that out to neighbors so that they're aware of what they're able to do within those parameters. So again, not a focus of our area to specifically lead that, but we would be helping neighbors to understand what currently is out there as far as resources, policies, etc.
And is there an opportunity to activate more public space, or is that just entirely dependent on the neighbors if they step forward or not?
Yeah, so again, it is neighborhood led, so it'd be up to neighbors to come together with that interest and connection within their community. Again, what we're doing on the back end is trying to make that as easy and as smooth as possible. So things like the policy, to be clear about that, things like our how-to guides, because policy isn't people's favorite thing to read. So trying to put that into an easily digestible way to see that on our website or in a quick, step-by-step guide. So that's where we're at right now, and it looks like Beth is going to add to that as well.
Yeah, I'll just add that one of the earlier questions was about some of the challenges that we face to doing this work, and I think one of the many opportunities we have is the two wonderful employees standing in front of you, but they are the two employees doing neighborhood work. We are fortunate to have a co-op student starting with us in May for 8 months from the University of Waterloo, but that is our capacity. And so one of our challenges is simply capacity. And so many of our programs from the neighborhood strategy have been more successful than we could have imagined, which is wonderful. But to grow more, we will need more capacity.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just ask one other quick thing. So if someone did want to turn some space into a garden, so do we provide some of the tools, and some of that's really hard work to break turf and stuff. So do we provide some of those tools, or does Tim just come out and hit with his with his tractor, or what?
So the Parks Department, Forestry and Hort, we do a lot of the prepping. They design it once they get approval from us. And again, if they need other resources on how to, we might send them to the experts, the Waterloo Regional Community Garden Network Council. But then, so we'll plant it, and then we will remove all the sod, bring in their soil, mix it up, and do a lot of that physical labor, the majority of it. Except for Matthew out at Lakeshore. We brought in a lot of the soil for that group, but he literally had it planned and did the majority of the work on the Saturday.
Thank you. I think this like you said, Chair Roach, about 5 or 10 minutes ago, these type of programs I think are just no disrespect to any of the other very important services that we run, that staff run through the city, but these are the type of things I think that really connect neighbors and community, and I think are just wonderful programs to support. So thank you all for the work you do on this.
Any other questions? Councillor Hamner.
Thank you, Chair Roach, through you. I'd just like to build a little bit on Councillor Wright's comment about the educational institutions, and it got me going through your policy. And I'm not to wordsmith or correct anything right now, but I'm wondering if, as you look at the policy going forward, reflect under the responsibilities of staff, the collaboration work that you do, because in your answer to Councillor Wright, I heard you say you do collaborate with the school boards to do things, so reflect it. There's nothing in the policy that says that. And I also heard you say collaboration with other groups. I'm thinking sort of bigger picture, that we are but one part of the city as the city of Waterloo, and we do need to collaborate with the neighborhood associations, with the school boards, with the universities, et cetera. So it's just a lens I'm starting to take with all of our policies, to wherever we can be outward facing, let's be outward facing. So just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a comment from me. I want to thank you for your report. Last week, Council participated in a workshop where we worked on a mission statement for Waterloo, and there were so many great ideas, but one common thread that kind of wove between the concepts is that Waterloo is a very livable city and that embraces community involvement. So I want to recognize the work that you do, Beth and Rhonda as parks technologist, and Haley as neighborhood services, and Julie as well. What you do is so important, and it really helps define Waterloo as one of the greatest cities in Canada. So thank you for everything you do.
I mean, I should probably take this as a pat on the back and say thank you, but I would also say thank you to all the neighborhood volunteers, community members, et cetera, that make this possible, because it is not possible without all that involvement. So I would just add amazing community members that make this possible.
Great, thank you. This council meeting will recess and reconvene at 6:30. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. I can't forget the recommendation.
Happy to move the recommendation.
I think it's, you know what? So we were asked to approve this report, and the council approved the corporate policy M012 Community Garden Program Policy. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hamner?
Question? Just to Councillor Hamner's point about the policy, do you want anything to happen on that?
Through you, Chair Rose, no, I'm happy with the next time they do the review, because it will come back again.
Okay. Just wanted to double check.
So you were moving and seconded by Councillor Wright. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So I got a little ahead of myself. The council meeting will recess and we'll reconvene at 6:30. Oh gosh, finally almost done.
I was waiting for it.